Tell me what we're going to look at on screen.
You know what? I actually want to go back to that previous slide that you have. And I think for a lot of the people in the room that are doing development, that slide is a lie, right? It looks all smooth and flowy and everything is great about that slide. But truthfully, it's a really bumpy slide in most cases because most organizations have a lot of different applications in their DevSecOps. They're put together with a combination of baling twine and swivel chair integration. And getting any kind of information out of that is nearly impossible in most cases, or very manual in getting the information out. So it looks all smooth and great, but frankly, for a lot of organizations, it's actually very difficult to put that kind of flow together. And that's what I really want to talk about today with ValueEdge is what we can do with ValueEdge and it being a single application to look through your DevSecOps. Okay, and so I'll just start at the top of the menu here, and just look at the menu for a second, right? Which is it kind of goes through a lot of the activities that happen through that DevSecOps, whether that goes from the creation of strategy and are we going to build the right things to what are we building and are we doing it fast enough and our engineers are they productive enough? Are we doing it with quality, right? Are we getting the right tests in place? Are we delivering the right code in the right way? Are we doing it securely? And finally, are we doing it so that the applications that we're producing are performant as well? And that's really what you kind of see in this all put together in ValueEdge in the first place. So let me jump into it a little bit. So the first part is, are we doing the right things? Okay, and this is the strategy module associated to ValueEdge. And the strategy module does the sort of thing that we do on a day-to-day basis when we're working together, actually, is what are the themes of the particular release, or what are the themes of Project Titanium X? These are the big things that Mark and you have done in terms of setting the agenda, and we can actually track against that. And this is kind of a fictional company, but we can track against those themes. How many features, how many developers are working on it? We can track against that in the first place in terms of our strategy, all the way through to being able to do what-if scenarios, right? What happens if we don't invest here in this particular feature this quarter? What happens if we move it out 3 quarters? Do we have enough people to deliver the feature? Most crucially, this is an application for our engineers and product managers to work with, right? And so as I do that, we're seeing kind of the Kanban view of being able to work with a backlog, right? And working with this backlog is like the meat and potatoes of what we're really doing from an agile development perspective. Moving stuff from being in progress to testing to ready to be closed, seeing all those features pushing through on the way through. And that meat and potatoes eventually goes into being able to see a dashboard and being able to get a view into what is happening on a particular release across the board or down to an individual product, right? And so this is a dashboard that you can adjust for your team to get the right information out of it. And a really good example of that information as well is looking at a quality and quality risk as well, right? So we know, Mark's already said apparently there will never be any more bugs. So that was kind of him, thanks to automation. But we will and know that we want to maintain more and more testing as we automate testing, and we know that we want to reduce the risk of features and products going through the pipeline. And so this is a risk score that we're looking at, and if I kind of dive into that risk score, I can dive in, and what I begin to see is for a particular product, I'm seeing kind of the risk score for that particular product, which is bringing up things like how much testing are we doing, how many commits are we making, how quickly are we making commits, are they happening very quickly? And I want to reduce the risk as I'm going through this so I can actually come in and have a look at what is actually causing my risk. And as it goes through here, it's identifying a whole bunch of additional tests I could do in order to reduce the risk of these features pushing through. And if I kind of back out from there again and look at an individual feature, and again, back to sort of the meat and potatoes of this application of what are we delivering, here's an individual feature, right? And this is the sort of thing that the engineers and product management, here's what the feature, day to day. Yep. And I look at it and I realize that there's no testing for this. Right? And so we have no tests for that particular feature. Most of the time, what would have to happen is somebody in QA would have to come in, figure out, look at the feature, figure out what the test is going to be, write that all down, or we can ask Aviator. And so Aviator is going to allow us to come in, hit create, generate tests, and it will actually go in and generate, based on the description of the feature, the tests that need to be run against this. Next release coming up, it will not only generate the tests, but it will automate those tests. So we're moving all the way from people having to do it before to being able to put that in as an automated test in the
So that's really a great example of also the autonomous machine to machine. The machine is deciding now.
Well, exactly. If you're doing, DevSecOps means doing sometimes, hundreds of commits a month very often, right? And you can't run tests like that anymore. And now we're actually automating the creation of those tests and the ability to run them as you go through that as well. And you mentioned something else in there as well, right? Which is, this is DevSecOps.
Yep.
And so this is integration, as you and I deal with this all the time, right? What are we doing about vulnerability management? We want to have the vulnerabilities checked on the way as the code goes through so that it's not an afterthought, but part of the development process.
So this is integration to Fortify.
Exactly. So
but what happens if a customer is not running in Fortify?
So good point, right? So this is absolutely an end-to-end process, but we have integrated in Fortify in this particular case, but the customer can put their vulnerability management software in place there that is modular to be able to do that. And the thing about these vulnerabilities as they show up is they can immediately be pushed into the backlog, right? And so somebody's addressing those right away. All right, next up, I just want to go in and touch a little bit more on performance and testing as well, right? So we have a lab to allow us to test against many different devices. And so this lab looks at, different tablets, different phones to make sure your application runs on the phone. And you want your application to actually know that when you hit the internet or hundreds of thousands of users inside your organization, that it will perform well as well. And so we can go in and do load testing against a particular feature or for a whole product as well, and see what that impact of the changes that you've made are on load and the ability to deal with it. So last thing I want to touch on is something near and dear to our hearts, unfortunately, which is reporting.
Yes.
Okay, so I sort of said that picture was very lumpy. Reporting is now going from something that people have to do upfront or as a manual process through it to something that is the byproduct of this application. And so the ability to pull information out as just on a live basis is huge, and it's there, it's available to you all the time, but it can even be intimidating a little bit, I think, sometimes to get more information. So it's another great area for us for Aviator. I can come in and I can add through a widget, just describe what I want in a widget, and it is designing my widget and adding in my new widget already. And now I have a new widget in my reporting dashboard. So really not having to know the data very well, just knowing what you want out from a reporting perspective. Yes. And that very, very quickly is ValueEdge putting it all together and the benefit of having all that stuff together to smooth out that line in DevSecOps.
Wonderful. Stephen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mui.
Exciting.